Hi, it's Dwyer. It is May 25th, 2022. Let's talk boxing. But first, remember, the opinion you should follow should be your own. Just consider this video to be a second opinion from a complete stranger online. Now, let's just be hypercritical here, right? I've found that power punchers, guys who are very successful with their power, who have one punch knockout capability, tend to have holes in their game that others can't get away with. So, Mike Tyson, great champion, right? There is a Tyson era in boxing, right? He gives Michael Spinks his first loss. He beats Larry Holmes. The line in the Buster Douglas fight was well over 30-1. That Mike Tyson wasn't proficient on his back foot. Right? In the comment section to this video, tell us the Tyson fight you saw, where Mike Tyson is moving away from an opponent who's on his front foot, which you and I know was unheard of in the late 80s, right? Where Tyson's dodging shots and showing a mobile jab and moving away. Joe Louis and Sonny Liston, not a lot of foot speed, right? Highly skilled. I would argue Liston is one of the most skilled fighters I've seen. Didn't have a lot of foot speed. Rocky Marciano, completely unorthodox. That's a blessing and a curse, because Marciano's off balance a lot. He could be outboxed. The first Jersey Joe Walcott fight, Marciano apparently lost, had no chance of winning on the scorecards but for the late knockout, right? Quite frankly, Marciano needed stoppages. The Ezra Charles fight, the one where Charles splits Marciano's nose. I know we're being hypercritical here. Vladimir Klitschko and, we'll call it his nephew, Anthony Joshua. Very robotic, clunky, not fluid, vulnerable to feints. Needed to stay in a defined construct, couldn't deviate that much out of it. Let's venture outside the heavyweight division to another very popular puncher, Canelo. Very incremental, very structured, right? Comes across the ring, is trying to hunt you down. You know he's not going to just run across the ring early. He's vulnerable to movement. He's vulnerable to volume. Now, once in a while, you realize a big man, a big puncher, is more than he seems. That the guy actually has another gear. Right, folks? This Benevidez, David Lemieux fight is downright scary. Benevidez, who I thought would beat Canelo before I saw this fight. Wow, now Benevidez really has me wondering who is better than him in boxing. This is a must-watch fight, right? Benevidez is not who he seems. Now just imagine a George Foreman, very skilled big man, right? Go by the skills, not by the length of the reign, because sometimes the reign is in an era where you're dealing with a Kenny Norton, a Muhammad Ali, a Ron Lyle, right? Sometimes the reign has a lot of guys in your division who are tough, right? George Foreman, very skilled big man. But just imagine him fighting a Joe Frazier, right? Legendary left hook, a guy who's aggressive on his front foot. And just imagine, instead of Foreman pushing Frazier away, which is what Foreman did in both fights, so Foreman could extend his arms. Just imagine Foreman seeing Frazier wanting to take the pocket and having the faith in his defensive skills to let him do so. Worse yet, picture Foreman wanting Frazier to throw his left hook. Right? Foreman was a guy who, when he was a commentator, talked about how he liked to taste the other guy's power. Right? This is not what happened, by the way, in either Foreman-Frazier fight. But just imagine Foreman wanting Frazier to throw his left hook and then having it blocked. Then you notice as Frazier's in the pocket trying to be offensive, you notice that Foreman, the slugger, right, the guy who you associate with just punching power, actually is defensively blessed, has his body blocked, is blocking shots, is picking off shots. Then imagine you're watching the film and you notice that Foreman, in addition to being defensively blessed, is an accomplished counterpuncher. Right? Doesn't have to lead. This is the power guy who's patient, who's a technician. Folks, I would take David Benevidez over Canelo. And after this fight, I would expect a stoppage. Because Canelo is a lot like David Lemieux. Right? And I consider Canelo to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. Don't get me wrong. But now you've figured out the level of David Benevidez. In this fight, and it's a jaw dropper. It's a short fight. It's a jaw dropper. In this fight, I was expecting the guys to tussle over who gets control of the pocket. I thought there'd be a lot of wrestling in this fight. There isn't, because David Benevidez, against a slugger, Lemieux's hallmark is power. He has a great left hook. Against a slugger, Benevidez, who Tyson calls the Mexican monster, right? That's the image. Big puncher. David Benevidez concedes the pocket. Folks, he's on his back foot, and you notice he's adept on it. He starts walking backwards. He allows Lemieux to come up close. Benevidez has an excellent jab, but he allows Lemieux to come up close. And you notice he's reading the angles. So Benevidez, of course, throws his left hook up top. Benevidez blocks it. Then you notice Benevidez is blocking almost everything Lemieux throws. Then you notice Benevidez is making Lemieux pay. Right? Counterpunchers want you to throw punches because that opens you up. Benevidez, as odd as this sounds, wanted heavy punching Lemieux to throw punches. Benevidez then puts on a counter-punching fest that culminates itself toward the end of the first round when he has Lemieux down, but the ref doesn't call it. He hits Lemieux, Lemieux backs away, falls into the ropes. Right? Just to understand that Benevidez is dominant. Right? Benevidez just beats the daylights out of Lemieux. And you notice when he opens up, Lemieux's practically defenseless. Harvey Dock goes over there at the end of the first round. Doc would tell Jim Gray that he was about to stop the fight. Lemieux is defenseless, but what I want people to do is to look at Benevidez in that moment. Deontay Wilder would be windmilling. We know that from the Audley Harrison fight. right? He would see a hurt man and he'd be trying to load up on shots, and, he would be throwing a lot of shots, hoping one lands big, right? That's an effective strategy. Sometimes just the volume gets the referee to stop the fight. That's not Lemieux. Lemieux goes over there and is practically an assassin. He's picking his shots while he's throwing heavy shots to end the fight. Now, let me just say, the fight goes a few more rounds. Lemieux's corner throws in the towel in the third round. I want people to think about that, because Lemieux is a warrior. His corner had seen enough in less than 9 minutes of boxing. Right? So David Lemieux, who has sparred privately with Bivol, who has sparred privately with Gilberto Ramirez, right? A guy who you need to know about, right? Who's unbeaten as I make this video, right? David Lemieux, as highly as I thought of him before this fight, is even better than I realized, right? The guy knows he's better. You cannot try to bum rush the pocket against him. If you're going to beat him, you're going to have to use the back foot. You're going to have to use movement. This guy is simply too blessed a puncher. By the way, he wins this fight by KO. I would argue he really wins this fight with great boxing, with defense and counterpunching. Right? The power, of course, then the opportunities open themselves up for the power, because Benevidez is an excellent boxer and an excellent defensive fighter. Right? Let me point out, too, that I know there are a lot of fighters out there who claim to not know their opponents and who claim to just be following what their corner tells them. That's not this guy. This guy completely knew what David Lemieux was going to do in this fight. So when Lemieux flashes that left hook, Benevidez has a hand up already. Right? Very scary fight. Let's just say Benevidez has declared war on the 168-pound division. I know some guys out there, Caleb Plant, are openly challenging Benevidez. Morrell is challenging Benevidez. Benevidez is going to have a run of it. Canelo had no choice, in my opinion, but to announce that he was going to proceed with his fight against Triple G and that he was going to seek Bivol later, because Canelo's very smart. Canelo understands that people view Bivol as heavier, bigger, taller, right? They view Canelo as heroic in taking on a guy from the 175-pound weight class, right? I think Canelo understands that if he were to fight his mandatory, one of them's Benevidez, he could get knocked out, right? Better to fight a guy in his 40s, Triple G, than to fight this guy, right? So just be aware of the fact that if you see a Benevidez fight and he just looks like he's going at it against an Anthony Durrell or someone like that, right? Just understand that, like George Foreman, who had a great jab, who was much better defensively than history remembers, this guy has a whole set of skills that he's not showing you. On the telecast, Al Bernstein keeps mentioning his defense. The problem is Benevidez is such an explosive puncher that I doubt 5 people watching the telecast caught what Al Bernstein was saying. Right? What he's saying is, look, as good as this guy looks, with the power, with the offense, the water here runs deep, very deep. So put me among those who believes Benevidez would beat Canelo. Understand, Benevidez is still unbeaten, just like Bivol is. Excuse me, did I say Bivol? I believe Benevidez beats Canelo. Bivol has the movement. That's an interesting fight. Right? That's an interesting fight. Benevidez would be able to hang with the light heavyweights. Right? I would take Benevidez over Beterbiev. Right? Joe Smith, that style-wise, that might be a little bit different, because Joe Smith is a little bit different than Beterbiev. Right? Let's remember, Beterbiev had problems with Marcus Brown. Gets dropped by Marcus Brown. But let's just say that Benevidez, who says he's committed to 168, is a fighter who could also thrive at 175. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. This is the puncher who's better than advertised. Right? He's a more accomplished counterpuncher than Vladimir Klitschko and Anthony Joshua, for example. Right? He's fundamentally sound in a way that a Rocky Marciano was not. Right? The question is, and he's big, the question is, how does he handle a skilled mover? Does he look like Sonny Liston looked against Ali? Or is he a guy who can cut off the ring on a Caleb Plant? I believe in time we're going to find out. That's how I see it. Let me hear from you. I hope you leave your comments in the comment section of this video. Thanks for stopping by.